All right, we're going to review adding and subtracting integers using integer chips. So if you recall, whenever you give someone $1 and then take it away, a positive and a negative is going to end up with $0. So same thing when we're using integer chips. So if I have a positive and a negative, it equals 0. We're going to cancel right out. So let's take a look at some examples looking at expressions. So if I have 4 positives and I'm going to add 4 negatives, all of those cancel out. 4 positives and 4 negatives are all going to cancel out and I'm left with 0. If it helps to think of it this way, every one cancels out. So let's take a look at this expression. So if I have 3 negatives and I'm going to add 2 more negatives, there's nothing to cancel out. So when I have the same sign, I'm going to add those all together and keep the sign. So I end up with -5. 3 negatives plus 2 more negatives is going to give me 5 negatives. So what if I have different signs? Let's say I have 3 negatives, I want to add 2 positives. Looks like we're going to have some more canceling. So that cancels out, and I have more negatives than I did positives. So it's kind of like I can just take off those 2 positives from the 3 negatives, and I'm left with -1. So you might remember hearing your teachers say in the past, whatever you have more of is what our answer is going to be. So if we have different signs, we can take the smaller one off, and whatever we're left with is what we have. I have 1 negative left over. So let's take a look at this one. Let's say I have 4 positives and I'm going to add a negative. Again, I have more positives in this case. So again, that's going to cancel out and I'm left with 3 positives. So 4 positives plus 1 negative leaves me with 3 positives left over. I can take off the one that has the less. Okay, so let's take a look at this. You can pause the video and practice if you want to. This chart has been partially filled in for you. So what do we have more of here? More negatives, so my answer is going to be negative. I have more positives, my answer is going to be positive. I have the same sign, so I'm going to keep that sign. Same sign, both positive. This one I have more positives, and this one I have an equal amount. Go ahead and try this on your own, and then click play to continue. All right, so our answers are here, -2, 2 positives, 12 negatives, 7 positives, 5 positives, and I end up with 0. So again, the sign of your answer comes from whatever sign you have more of. If you have more positives, your answer is going to be positive. More negatives, your answer is going to be negative. If they're the same sign, you add it and keep the signs. All right, let's look at subtracting with integer chips. Same rules apply. If you have a positive and you're adding a negative, they're going to cancel each other out. So let's take a look at what subtracting looks like here. So 4 positives, take off 3 positives. I'm left with 1 positive left over. You've done 4 subtract 3 since first grade, but we're showing it with integer chips now. When I look at this, if I have 3 negatives and I want to take off 2 of the negatives, I'm left with -1. What happens when I don't have things to take away? How do I do this? So if I have 3 negatives and I want to take off 2 positives, let me move this over here. What I had to do here is I had to add 0 pairs here. So I'm started with my 3 negatives right here. And I still have -3 because this equals 0 and that equals 0. But what I'm going to do, I'm going to move those together, and now I can actually take away the 2 positives. So I still have -3 because there's -1, -2, -3, 0, and 0. But now that I have those zeros there, I can take away the 2 positives, and I'm left with -5. So there's something that you did last year, and add the opposite phrase that we're going to look at now. So if you notice, this is why your teacher said that if I add the inverse or add the opposite, we found that pattern. We found that we can prove it. I can do that every time. So let's look up here. I'm going to add the inverse or add the opposite. So 3 negatives plus 2 positives, more negatives and positives, -1. I can do that with this one too, even though you know how to do 4 subtract 3. If I do 4 plus a -3, I have more positives. I have 1 more positive than I do negatives. So it will work every time. Let's go ahead and practice some of these. So add the opposite. Add the opposite, add the inverse. Make 2 changes every time. Every time, 2 changes. Right here, I have a +3, so I'm going to make it -3. Okay, pause the video and take a second to finish those. Okay, let's see what we get. Negatives and negatives, more negatives. Positives and positives, all positives. I have more positives than negatives here. And in this case, I have negative plus negative equals a negative. So same rules applied. Add the opposite. And whatever you have more of is your answer. All right. Good luck.